So today we're looking at... Roll the intro. Yes, this is Swiss Army Man, or you could argue Swiss Army Dan. It's a film by Daniels, with Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano. If you're a terrible punsmith like I am, you could say it's dantastic, but I'd strongly recommend against that. Like previous weeks, this is still somewhat death-centric in a big way, but it's also a lot more hopeful, a lot more optimistic, and a lot more fart joke based. Normally not something I go for, but it's such an important part of the plot, which of course we'll get to a bit later on, that I was able to look past it. My normal dislike of that type of humour was not a problem in this situation. Also, as a musician, the music throughout is gorgeous, and I did look into the soundtrack because I do want it. It's a Christmas present idea if any of you want to be nice and generous. But I did look into it, and they tried to do as much as possible. Obviously, certain things they couldn't, but as much as possible, they tried to make it as though Hank and Manny could have created it out in the wild. So there's wood, there's vocals, obviously, you know, drumming on natural things. They did try and make it as authentic as possible to their experience. But from the get-go, we do get a good bit of an insight into Hank's character. On the boat, one of the most important things that I noticed at the start was that it says, "I don't want to die alone." And really, that's Hank's motivation. In films, we look at what is a character's motivation, what gives them the impetus to take the journey they do, what causes the character arc, because obviously they have to start at one point and come to a different point at the end of the film for character development. And yeah, his is he doesn't want to die alone. He's clinging to this idea, as we learn later on, of the ideal version of Sarah as the only thing that will make him happy, and he hasn't been able to do that, so he ran away. He's got a father who seems to disapprove of him from everything we see, and a lot of issues with the image of his mother during personal time. You know, he's a very messed up kid, and like I say, he just doesn't want to die alone. It's something I think we all experience at various points in our life. Throughout life, we may reach periods where we're like, do you know what, maybe I'm all I need. But for the most part, we do worry, I think, as a species about this potential in our future. Now, of course, when he meets Manny, or just chances upon him having washed up on a beach, he mentions the fact that he, you know, wanted to see his life flashing before his eyes, and this can be taken two ways. From everything we learn throughout the film, his life was so boring that he didn't have anything interesting to see. It wasn't like the idealised flip book that we all imagine. Or he definitely wasn't going to die at that point in time. Now, optimistically, we could say it's the latter, but I strongly suspect it's the former in his case, because, like I say, we see how much of a sad sack he is, for want of a better phrase. During the first part of the film, we're mainly spending our time with Hank. Manny is present, but not so much interactive. It's only after he's been turned into, I guess, a water fountain, and I never thought I'd say this in a video, but ooh, corpse water. Ugh. But needs must, I guess. And of course, his exhalations, you know, sort of make it sound like he's saying Manny, and, you know, Hank's enjoying himself with it. You know, it's like having company, but of course, then he does start to speak, and I think it's a perfectly reasonable reaction. Just run away from the corpse that suddenly decided to greet you. I don't think any of us would act any different. But this is the beginning, to paraphrase, of a beautiful friendship, and it really is the stepping stone to the rest of the proceedings that we see. As Manny doesn't really remember much of his life, or even life in general, he's almost like a child. He's having to be taught everything from scratch, in a way. And there's a few things sort of early on, you know, the burial and waste disposal comparison, which I found very interesting, because when you think about it, they're both tucked away to get them out of the way and not contaminate us. It's an interesting parallel. But there's so many different elements, you know, that he's taught throughout the film, and this is where one of the big themes of the movie starts to really rear its head. The idea that repression is kind of pointless. We compartmentalise ourselves. We shouldn't say or do certain things in polite society, and there's no really good reason for it. It's just because everyone said, no, you can't do that. Obviously, I'm not talking about murdering someone or screaming in someone's face, but things like, for example, holding in farts. and not saying what you really mean. I mean, I know tact and diplomacy do have a place. It's not something that I think we should completely get rid of, but there is a line. And, not talking about things can be just as dangerous. One example can be sort of where, abstinence is taught as sex education rather than actually giving you an idea of what it is. It doesn't always work. People will experiment, and often those experiments will go wrong because they're not going at it with a good sense of information. But like I say, that is one of the big messages, I think, of the film, that repression really doesn't work. It's not the best solution. Like holding in farts, it works to a degree, but eventually you're going to have to let loose. You're going to have to release it, and this analogy is really making me feel uncomfortable, so let's move on really quickly. One of the great traits of Manny, like I said at the start of this video, it's a very hopeful look, and even when, they're discussing the boring things, just getting on a bus and watching the world go by, he's optimistic about it. He's like, I miss this, this fun thing of just experiencing the world. And it's really eye-opening how much that we just see things like bus journeys, and I mean, in particular, I really don't like bus journeys if I can avoid them. But everything that we do could be argued as magical and wondrous if we just choose to look at it the right way. I've said before that we are a miracle, for want of a better word. The fact that, billions of years of evolution and sort of breeding and things like that, and we are the chance occurrence of two sex cells coming together at the right time. The odds are astronomical, and we beat those odds. It's really impressive. And it's again part of what this film, I think, is also looking at. It's a way of looking at the world as not a horrible thing that we have to endure, but a delightful thing that we choose and get to experience. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, of course. We are dealing with a man who is deeply troubled and deeply depressed, I would say, in Hank. When we learn the truth of Sarah, that she has this life, she has this family, and arguably Hank's a kind of stalker. He's so sympathetic, we feel for him up until this point, but we see that information on his phone, and arguably what he's doing with Manny, it's kind of creepy, stalkery kind of level stuff, acting out the ideal situation of this girl and being her in a way. There's a guy named Buffalo Bill who'd probably enjoy that kind of play acting. But it is kind of sad because he's doing it from a place of not knowing how to tackle it. Whilst his dad was very disapproving, like I say, we seem to get that impression, maybe he wasn't good at guiding him. It's kind of a parent's role in many ways to tell us about the world, and arguably Hank is being a parent to Manny in this by telling him, like he even makes an Everybody Poops book, and things like that, and it gives him a chance to impart wisdom in a way that perhaps he'd have benefited from. And that's a really beautiful way of looking at it. We've got this troubled man trying to help another troubled man through, trying to make them see the good, because maybe that'll help him see the good. But there is like I said before, the music in this is stellar. It's absolutely amazing. And there's a song towards the sort of latter act of it all, where it's like everything everywhere matters to everything. And yeah, it does. You may see someone walking by in the streets happily in their own little world. They may not mean anything to you at that point in time. You may not really acknowledge them fully. You just know that there is someone present. But someone somewhere, that's their brother, sister, daughter, friend, lover, partner, wife, husband, non-binary designation, partner, whatever, it may be. And that's, again, a beautiful way of looking at the world. It's so much hopefulness in with its kind of weird message of repression. It sows these seeds that I think a lot of people, after watching it, have felt so much better about life, have felt much better about their own life in particular, and just feel a lot warmer inside. It sounds really sort of mawkish and what have you to say that's like a Hallmark card commercial or something, but it is. It's a warm feeling of feeling like, yeah, you matter. Everything matters. Everything is made of matter, so of course everything matters. We are all made of the same star stuff. And this is really furthering that message, and I don't think there is a problem with that. I think we need these reminders every so often. We need films like, say, Let Us Pray and Lake Mungo and things like that to look at the dark side of life. I think ignoring it is wrong. And again, that would be repression. But we also need films like this to say, hey, it's okay sometimes. Life may deal you a bad hand, but you just play the cards you've dealt with. You know, there's various people out there with various disabilities and sort of issues that they're facing, but we do what we can with what we've got. That's all we can do. And of course, the two messages of this film intertwine beautifully in that. Don't repress yourself. Go out and enjoy life. Can you go wrong? I don't think you can. There's one particular part towards the end of the film that I think really pushes the life affirmation message so well, whilst also acknowledging that, you know, not everything's sunshine and rainbows, and I'll let Manny himself explain.
Maybe everyone's a little bit ugly. Yeah, maybe we're all just ugly, dying sacks of and maybe all it'll take is one person to just be okay with that, and then the whole world will be dancing and singing and farting, and everyone will feel a little bit less alone.
You may consider yourself ugly, you may think you're useless, you may be crap at things, but so what? Nobody's perfect. Everyone's probably had those thoughts at some point in their life, aside from probably, you know, pathological narcissists. We all don't think that we're as good as we can be at some point in our lives. And it doesn't matter. We muddle through. It's life affirmation, like I say, which is the beautiful part of this film. But one part that I missed the first time around, actually, I think, I don't remember when I was rewatching it, picking up on it, is the fact that when they're talking about Manny's body, they actually say that he was likely a bridge jumper. So the Manny that we knew, who probably isn't even called Manny, but the Manny that we knew, such a positive, hopeful outlook on life, learning about it through Hank's guidance, was only there because he was in a point where he didn't think there was any point to it. He didn't think life was worth living. He was probably really the opposite of optimistic and hopeful. And that's kind of beautiful in its own right. This chance occurrence was caused by the man who would become Manny, if you will, giving up. And he was there to encourage Hank to not give up. Many questions have been raised as to the ending. You know, is it real? And I think if we're looking at it from a sensible point of view, it's not, of course. You know, maybe he got so far as dragging the corpse down to the river's edge, but then he was probably detained and sent to a secure mental health unit or something. And some people even perhaps thought, you know, that maybe the whole film is just his dying thoughts after the hanging at the start. That was actually successful. This is all just his mind taking one last flight of fancy. Again, very believable. But I kind of want to believe the ending's real. That a corpse can come back to life through love and be taught about how kind of broken but beautiful life is, and fart his way to freedom. There's something weirdly beautiful about that. Like I say, as someone who doesn't appreciate fart humour, the fact that I can see that as beautiful means the Daniels did well, all of them. And I love this film. I went in thinking this is going to be really silly and kind of puerile, and I came out the other side with a heartwarming, life-affirming tale. And like I say, I want the ending to be real so much. Maybe Manny's still out there somewhere, you know, sort of farting his way around the world. Why not? Wouldn't you do it if you could? So until next time, as always, take care.